After e4, e6, d4, d5, black is playing the French defense, white goes on with knight c3, and in this video, we're going to try to close the entire saga of the French. So this is the extras video. We're just going to mention all the lines that we haven't mentioned in the past, so that we can understand how to fight against the French defense in every occasion. Let's start with the Rubinstein. We're going to do some Rubinstein, some Steinitz, and some Winawer. Anyway, let's start with the Rubinstein. When take, there's two ideas here that we haven't seen. One of them is the immediate b6. That one was never explored before. And the other one was b6, but after a while. Let me show you. Let's first of all go through this one. Knight d7, main move. Knight f3 and knight f6 in order to be able to recapture with the knight. Take anyway. And now c3, right? We've seen this a lot in the past. Bishop to e7 developing, and now bishop to d3. Castle. Bishop to f4. And in the past we went through the main idea here, which is pawn to c5, and how to deal with that. Now we're going to go through this move, b6. We haven't seen that at all. How to exploit this. It's actually really annoying, and it's very solid by black apparently, right? Because then black puts the bishop in fianchetto, and black is really solid, and it's going to put pressure on this knight forever. And when that happens, you can't really challenge the bishop with bishop e4 or something, because there's a knight and there's a bishop. So you play queen e2 anyway, and after bishop goes to b7, the key move now to remember is bishop e5. This is the pattern to remember. A move like queen to d5 to put more pressure on this knight is met with just bishop takes the pawn in c7. There's no compensation for that. The rook doesn't get... Yeah, the rook goes on an open file, but this pawnshot is very safe, and our opponent has no reason to play like that. If, let's say, after that move, let's say knight to g4, attacking the bishop, how to deal with this? Bishop goes back to g3, this is important. Bishop to d6, challenging our strong bishop. Bishop to c2. And let's try to understand what's going on here. Our opponent wants to take this bishop. That means if we castle short, it's going to ruin our castle. And we want to keep the rook attacking this file in cooperation with the bishop. So for instance, c5, thematic move, castle long, completely careless. Bishop takes, for example, take back with the h-pawn, and that's it. There's no coming back at this point. Pawn can't take in d4 because of bishop h7. The knight will have to go back. But you get to play knight to e5. The idea of pawn takes in c5, and it's like position is evaluated around +4 something. And so even if the knight doesn't go back, let's say, I mean, taking here, it's really stupid because, you know, you'll be making a fork as well if you take with the rook. But if instead black here just plays h6 to stop the influence of the bishop here, you're going to play rook h4 attacking the knight. And when the knight moves again, you're just going to take in c5, free pawn, and, you know, got this counter attack. It's just completely winning. So in this position, like what black is just playing the Rubinstein, so you take. And let's look at this line, b6 immediately. How to batter this silly opening. I mean defense. Knight f3, bishop to b7 immediately is met with bishop b5 check. Straight away, don't even think about it. And obviously we're going to be applying a lot of pressure over there. So a move like knight to d7 is really bad. Because you play knight e5, you're already winning. Bishop can't really take in e4. Because you've got double attack on this knight. So bishop takes, but then you take this, check, king moves. And now bishop simply wins the piece by attacking the bishop and attacking the rook. You know, you're going to be winning the bishop. Bishop can't take you because of knight c6. So as we said, in this position, knight e5, knight f6 doesn't help, because when you take this knight, you're going to have a double attack on d7. So in this position, back here, when we gave a check, let's not look at knight d7 because it's stupid. Let's look at two options here. One of them is knight to c6, blocking with a piece. Now, similarly, we have to do this, knight e5. And that's it, we're putting a lot of pressure on that knight. This cannot be defended with knight d7, knight e7, it seems to be making sense. However, queen to g6 threatens mate, and this is now a devastation. g6 can't really happen because knight f6 is mate. And so it's really bad. Like, for example, here, instead of knight e7, what about queen to d5? Puts more defense over this knight also attacks this bishop and attacks this knight. It looks like it does the whole thing. Simply queen e2 defends this, defends that, and there's nothing to do now. We're gonna be winning this piece because we have two attackers and black queen is not gonna be there. Now it's black to move, yeah, but let's say black plays a6, just to make an example. He plays c4, and you're kicking the queen away from that square, and you're winning material. You will be able to just take, right? If, let's say, another move, but what other move? There are no other moves. Position evaluated +4 for that, for a reason. Bishop developing, whatever, you play c4. Attacks the queen will have to move. What if black castles? That is kind of the best thing left to do for black. White now goes on to play bishop c4. You don't want to play knight f7 here, that makes a fork, but the development of the black player is kind of amazing at the moment, and you know, when the knight is taken here in d4, you're in huge trouble. So don't do that. You're gonna play bishop c4, and when the queen moves, when the queen takes the pawn in d4, you can take knight to f7, and white is much better at that point. If the queen goes, let's say, to a5 with the check, you play bishop to d2, and the queen will have to go away, and then you can just reach f7. That's also the best move in the position. I mean, if black plays bishop b4, the best move is still knight f7. If black plays knight to b4 with the idea of going to c2, you castle and you get rid of every problem. And this pawn seems to be free, but it's not, because you're going to play king b1, obviously. You're not going to take. And now the knight's under attack, the queen's under attack, so the only thing left to do is to move back. But now once again, knight f7, it's just like position evaluated +5. So let's go from the start to understand this a little bit better. Knight c3, take, and now the immediate b6. Knight f3, fianchetto, and then check. Now knight c6. This is what we're looking at. Knight e5. And after queen to d5, we said queen e2. So here let's look at two potential options. One of them is knight f6 now. You play f3 to support the knight more. a6 to kick the bishop away, take, c4. We're trying to deflect the queen from there so we can take this bishop. So queen has to give us a check. Bishop d2. Okay, queen a4 defends the bishop. b3. And that's it. We're winning material. And in this position, what if black just castles? Okay, now here you play bishop c4, attacking the queen. And when the queen moves, obviously you're going to be able to play knight f7, right? So if the queen takes the pawn in d4, it looks a bit scary because black is... Its development is kind of okay, at least the way the pieces are placed. Knight f7 though should settle. Makes the fork. Knight f6 now, double attack on this knight and development. How to react to this? Take this rook. You know, our knight's under attack, so black says, you know what, you're up the exchange, but now I'm going to win a piece. Well, you take this one. And there are no deviations here, so the king takes. And now you just castle. And you're completely winning. Even if you don't want to do king takes and you think that you might have seen a deviation zug, after taking the bishop in b7, if black plays knight f2, it says, you know what, if you take me, I can take this one. And then the white knight isn't really going anywhere. It seems like he's completely trapped and then win material. Now white plays the crucial c3 move. The queen has to go away from there. And when she does, castle is the best move. So that we can keep defending the bishop. And when the king recaptures, you take with the rook and you're completely winning this endgame. So back in this position, we give the check straight after bishop b7. What if black blocks it with the pawn? Okay, bishop back to c4. And after development, knight f6, you play knight e to g5 straight away. There's a lot of pressure over this square. In fact, if black plays h6 now, knight to f7. Boom! It's an incredible move. It's a fork to two major pieces, so the king has to take. But knight to e5 check. The king has to go king to e8, for instance. Well, obviously king to g8, then you have this comes with check. But let's say king to e8, queen to d3, aiming at g6. Best move according to the engine is queen e7, knight to g6, forking the two major pieces. Queen f7, take this one. And when the queen goes back to h5, the knight has got nowhere to go. It's trapped, but you're just going to take here in e6. We're going to close the line there. It's completely winning endgame. Let's take it from the start now, and let's look at a Winawer variation. Bishop e4, e5, c5, a3. We've seen this many times. Now black plays the move bishop a5. So we're looking at this variation now. As you remember, you're going to play b4 now from the previous videos. And after the pawn takes in d4, you know that you don't have to take this bishop, because then it's actually ugly. You're going to play knight to b5. Now you're threatening the bishop, and you're threatening to recapture with the knight. And this is and you're also threatening to go to the amazing d6 square. A move we have never seen before for some reason is bishop to c7 now, straight away. We've always seen bishop b6. Black's idea to protect the pawn a little bit more and preserve the bishop pair. Anyway, after bishop to c7 straight away, what do you play? You play f4 because you need to defend this pawn. Now, let's look at two options. If black, let's say, attacks the knight, right? Okay, now this is the moment to take the bishop. Take. Knight f3 comes now, development. Knight c6. Bishop d3, just normal developing moves. There are no other moves that could be played. Knight e7, castle. And now, if black castles, it's already game over. Bishop h7. As you know, this is the Greek gift. King takes, knight g5, the queen is going to h5. And from that, looks like we're having a good dinner tonight. So is that back in this position, instead of castling, right? Obviously, castling loses the game. h6 by black. What about this? Okay, queen e1. And after castling, g4. And the center is quite close, as you can see. That means you can push the pawns on the side and not care about anything. You're going to play g5 and open up the position. And look how amazing our bishops are placed. Our queen, how easily they can infiltrate on the king side. So f6 by black, trying to challenge that. Doesn't matter. Queen to g3. And that's it. If he takes, take back. There are no moves now that save the black player. There's no way to infiltrate. Knight g6, knight f5, none of this is possible. Our pawn in g4 is so strongly placed. a5 by black, trying to undermine the pawn on the side. You just play b5. Obviously, why am I showing you this move? Because it's a typical move when they obviously you can't take, you can't even take back. If you play bishop d2, but then take, and suddenly our opponent is playing. Also because the center cannot be removed. So someone has to open the side and let the pieces go that way. But you played just b5 here, and that's it. Then you can carry on with the moves that we established, g5 and so on. So in this position, after f4, black plays knight to c6. What about this move? Instead of a6, basically. Okay, fine, take the bishop, check, queen takes back, bishop d3. Same stuff. Let's look at this idea. f6 with the idea of potentially developing in f6 instead of e7. b5. You punish it straight away. And when the knight moves, check. Now, this can be stopped in two ways. Well, g6 doesn't work because you can just take it for free. If king moves, let's say king f8. Okay, bishop d2. Put pressure on the knight. Knight develops to e7. Knight f3, and finally now g6 seems to be possible, but you just play queen h4, targeting here. Also, you're gonna have possibility to reach h6. It's completely winning position for white. The advantage is huge. You'll have to take it from here. So in this position, after the check, what if black tries to trade and you go to a normal endgame? Okay, you play queen h3, and after bishop to d7, developing knight f3, our opponent seems to be able to castle. Castle, as a matter of fact, comes a4. Knight h6, developing. Castle. Knight f5. How to deal with this? Strangely enough, you take. You gave us our amazing light square bishop against the French. But then after take, bishop to b2. Okay, knight to c4 seems to be making sense. Attacks the bishop, attacks lots of squares near our territory. Taking d4. Also, that pawn was not defendable. King to b8. queen to h4 comes now. You'll see why in a second. I mean, clearly we all know why. Let's look at this idea. Pawn takes in e5, knight takes. And after take, we've got a pass pawn. Although it's a bit weak. Rook d to g8. Black now obviously has to play the French way, so he's got to push these pawns, g5, g4, and so on. But here's what we wanted to do before, by going to h4. Queen to f2, putting more pressure here. If black, let's say, plays bishop e7, whatever, right? You just take the pawn, okay? So, here, okay, let's say b6. Now, a5 is the best move. And after bishop to b5, now the queen is defending this square a little bit more. However, rook f to b1. So now you realize that that was a mistake. But even if the bishop hadn't done this mistake that I just wanted to illustrate, even then, you've got like so many pieces attacking here. You can definitely sacrifice and go for checkmate. a6 defends the bishop. Sacrifice. Hehe. Pawn takes back, and now simply take back. And now e6 attacks the queen. So very, that's a pass pawn, so it's gotta have to be taken. But either way, check. King moves, and now you take this pawn and you take it from here. The last thing we're gonna look at before we finally close this video of the extras is the Steinitz, the most annoying defense that I could possibly think of after the Caro-Kann. I mean, they're both disgusting. Knight f3, knight c6, we've seen this a lot in the past, bishop e3, and now there's two variations that need to be seen. One of them is the immediate f6. I've encountered this recently, so I wanted to make a video about it. Right, so this is actually not good. So let's see how to punish it. Take back, and now, if black takes back with the knight, you simply win a pawn here. And that's it, there's no compensation for this pawn. The game is opening up, and black has a weak e6 pawn to target in the future. If black tries this sacrifice, this pawn here, it doesn't work, right? You're just gonna take, and then when the bishop finally recaptures, now this triple attack on this knight. However, you just take here in c6, and now you come in with an attack on the queen, so obviously bishop e3 is not possible, the queen will have to take you, and you can take back with the rook. If pawn takes knight, you wrap a piece. If bishop takes bishop, then check, king moves, knight, save the knight from the attack of the pawn, and then you're gonna take the rook. You're completely winning. So at this position, after taking the pawn in f6, what if black takes it with the queen developing? It looks like this is fine, but now black is abandoning the queen side. So knight b5 comes with a threat. This just cannot be stopped at this point. I mean, the queen will have to basically admit to losing tempo and going back to d8. But if that happens, you're just gonna play knight g5. And you're pressuring this pawn. So after knight f6, so that the bishop defends this pawn and the knight goes back to a more decent square. Once again, you're just taking the pawn in c5 completely for free. Providing also a potential outpost in d6, although that's not something that is going to be guaranteed, of course. So let's go back a few moves. So here, after knight going to b5, what if king to d8 to stop the threat? Queen to d2. And after a6, kicking the knight away, the knight goes back to c3. b5 by black, pushing on the queen side. That's how the attack is usually carried with the French. g3, simply creating more defense here. Also potential other diagonal to get out for the other bishop. Bishop d6, developing. Just take. And now this cannot be taken. Like, if black takes it back with the bishop, you're going to castle long. And, this position is evaluated much, much better for white. If black takes the knight, same thing, you're gonna castle. And let's look at this idea that you might be thinking b4. Then when you move the knight, then the black knight is really, as we all know in the Steinitz, wants to go to e4, from which it would be extremely annoying. That move doesn't work because you're just gonna sacrifice the knight in d5. This is the best move. And when they take you, then you've got an attack on loads of different pieces. You're gonna recapture the material, except the black king is not gonna last. So back in this position, we went through this new idea of f6. Let's go back a second into one of those lines that we've seen in the past. One of the most popular moves here is queen b6. As we know, we have to battle it with knight a4, check, c3, old theory. take the pawn and now b4. And as we know now, there's this annoying sacrifice of the knight, pawn takes, bishop takes, bishop, but we have seen enough of it. And there's a new move that has to be seen, which is actually important because it's one of the most popular, which is simply the queen retreating to c7. Okay, fine. Taking d4, this is the novelty. Bishop to e7, developing. Bishop to d3, castling as soon as possible. And now black will castle. Let's explore two moves before that. Knight takes in d4 now. You take back with the bishop. And when they castle, queen to h5 basically already ends the game. Because now, what are you going to do to stop this threat? If g6, then simply queen h6. Rook to e8 to be able to play bishop to f8. Castle, as if nothing was happening. Bishop f8. Queen to g5. Queen to d8, desperate for swaps. Queen to g3. And the the light square bishop of our opponent will never play again. White plan here is very simple. You're just going to play h4 and push the pawn. If black plays h5, seems like it stops the whole initiative. You just play queen h3. And we're exploiting the completely closed center to simply plan to play rook a to e1. And then we're obviously going to play g4. And nothing stops that from happening. And by the way, back in this position, you might say g6 is weakening. What about h6? Okay, you already played g4 here, and then you're going to play g5. This is even easier now. So that move is just rubbish. So nothing was going to be... It's not like black could save the situation. So here, in this position, earlier we went through knight takes in d4. What about g6 already? Okay, castle. Castle. Looks like now we don't have that queen h5 move, obviously. Knight to b5 attacks the queen. The queen will have to move. Queen to d8. Queen to e2. That's how you place the pieces. a6 attacking the knight. Does it mean that we just wasted a move by going to b5? That was one of those silly moves? No. Now you played d4, but you've created a weakness in the square b6. Okay, knight d4 takes. Always take with the bishop then. b5 by black. Knight to b2. The knight looks bad, but it's going to be fine. Knight to b6, trying to go to c4. This is what they usually do. If you're a white player that plays e4 and you play against the Steinitz a lot and you try to fight it, you know that these are the moves they play. They play them so much and we hate them for this. Anyway, knight b6, you play a4. This is the key move that I personally always forget to play. I always look at this knight here as some sort of thorn in the back, but actually a4 just does the trick. There's nothing to do here. If knight comes here, you just take the pawn for free. If the pawn takes, or actually a little bit stronger, will be bishop to b7, defending the rook, so now the pawn is no longer pinned. But still, you just take. Obviously, the queen can't take because then we will be dropping the knight. So now you just take this pawn with no compensation whatsoever for black. So back in this position, one last thing that needs to be said is, what if black castles straight away, without any swap, without g6, without any of that? Okay, just castle. And after a6 by black, the idea of playing b5, queen h5 comes. g6. Okay. Knight e6. Boom! It's an incredible move. Completely careless of the queen. Well, obviously, because we're attacking in c7, we're also attacking this pawn, so that's gonna be a disaster, an absolute disaster. Let's make an example. Pawn takes queen, fine. Take the queen. Rook to b8 to save itself from the attack of the knight. Knight to d5. That knight is cleaning the opponent's pawns. b5. Okay, knight b2. Never worry about playing that move. Bishop to d8, preserving at least the bishop pair. Bishop e4, conquering more space in the center. Bishop to b7. Fianchettoing, but I think it's pointless now, because after rook a to d1, it is white that is eating caviar tonight. Rook to e8, developing. Bishop to f5, putting pressure on the knight. The knight will have to move. Knight to f8. These are forced moves, right? You don't really have many other options. You can't go to b6. You can't go to f6. You can't go to f4. You can't go to e5. So you have to be... So I'm not just playing random moves because I got nothing better to do than playing random moves. I'm playing only moves, forced moves. Because obviously white is playing stockfish moves, right? I'm playing... These lines are created with the engine. And so even if you make the opponent respond at the best of their possibility, they're still going to lose. Knight d3 is the move from where we're going to close the line. Black can't really move anything, literally. And it's only a matter of time before we take advantage of that. And now let's have a look at this position. After knight e6, we went through pawn takes. What if black just takes the knight and says, you know what, I don't fall for your stupid sacrifice, let's show me what you got. Well, bishop takes here. And now we're also threatening in h7, so the pawn has to take. Now we gave away 2 pieces. We need to checkmate. It's imperative to do so, but then queen g6, king h8, rook f3, and we're going on holiday.